everyone, and welcome to this morning's session of the 7th Annual Google Camp Conference. My name is Isamar, and I will be your moderator tech for this session. I'm here to provide virtual support for both you and the presenters during the presentation. Should you have any questions or need assistance with the Zoom interface, you can use the chat icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Search for moderator, and you can send me a direct private message, and I'll do my best to provide you with assistance. And now to announce this morning's session, Know Thy Google Impact, hashtag KTGI, Google Analytics for Beginners, presented by Dr. Mayer and Abel Gonzalez.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for being with us. We'll give everyone two more minutes to join us. Hope you're enjoying this amazing event already. The link to our presentation is in the sketch. If you don't have that link yet, I'll drop it in the chat right now. Okay, and it's 11:10. Good morning, everyone. I'm Ginny Mayer, and this is Abel Gonzalez. We're side by side here at the old RCOE building. Excited to be co-presenting for Google Camp 2022. I am a K-12 pathway coordinator for College of the Desert through the Career Technical Education Unit, as well as an instructional specialist, and I'll let Abel introduce himself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abel Gonzalez. I am a co-instructional specialist here with Dr. Mayer. I spent about 13 years in the classroom teaching marketing at multiple high schools, and now I have the pleasure of working with Jenny and the CTE Union supporting all our regional programs.
Can you guys all hear us okay? Can we get a thumbs up? All right, we see some familiar faces. It's great. Thank you for supporting us. So I'm going to start the screen share. This is a little disclaimer. We are not Google Analytics experts. We are not certified in Google Analytics. We are Google Education certified educators, but today's information can get very technical. And so if you run into any issues setting up Google Analytics at your site, please reach out to your ed tech experts at your district. And they should be able to help you with the technical aspects. And we've provided some how-to videos at the end of our presentation that should help you get that set up. We'll go through the steps and give you some reasons why we think analytics are valuable. And then time permitting at the end, we will go through some demos with some of our demo sites. And we'll try to let you out at 12 because I'm sure you'll be hungry for lunch at that point. All right, so let's begin. So I'm just adjusting my second screen so I can see you guys. While I'm presenting from my screen. And okay. So the link to the presentation was in the chat, and maybe Isa can paste it again for those who just joined us. And we work for RCOE in the Career Technical Education Unit. And we actually have multiple websites through Google Sites that we use, which is why we are presenting on knowing our Google impact. We serve approximately 135 CTE teachers. And so when they interact with our digital space on our Google site, which is internal, they actually have to have an RCOE login for that. We like to monitor how they interact with our content. The QR code in the presentation should take you to our slides as well. So if you're not familiar with Google Analytics, as I said, it's a very, very technical space. It's technically meant for monitoring sales if you use Google Sites for your online business. So it's a way to monitor web traffic to your Google site. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have ever created a Google site? Maybe do the digital hand if your video is off or thumbs up. Okay, cool. So a few of you. How many of you use Google Docs or Google Sheets or Google Slides? Hopefully more of you, possibly all of you. Okay, very cool. So, so this presentation is actually a two-part because Google Analytics, the technical difficult one, is for Google Sites, but there's also an activity dashboard you can use with Docs, Sheets, and Slides, which those of you who use those with your students will find very, very useful. So setting up Google Analytics, as I said, you might need to reach out to your EdTech office. The first step is creating a Google site. So you need to have a Google website to monitor what's going on with your Google site. Sites.google.com is the URL where you start if you are creating a new Google site. Once you've created the Google site, you also need to navigate to Google Analytics, which is a whole different URL. That's analytics.google.com. And then you need to create an account, which there's a screenshot of here. And that's where it gets pretty technical. I'm going to demo that at the end. So after you create an account and you, of course, you title it. I have one for today for Google Camp Demo. My website for today is going to be just a random College of the Desert website I created for CTE services that I provide there. Now, to make it even more technical, there is a measurement ID. This measurement ID, which you see these letters and numbers here, is a way for Google Analytics, that one website, to be able to communicate with your website URL, a different website, right? Your website. So the measurement ID is what tells Google Analytics, this is the website we're going to be monitoring traffic for. Once you find that measurement ID, and it may take an act of God, because as Google has, they tend to change Google Analytics. It's changed very rapidly. So in the year and a half since we've been using it at RCOE, I think they've gone to a whole new platform with measurement IDs. It used to be called tracking ID. So even the terminology can be very, very confusing. We'll look at that dashboard in a minute, but for now, you just need to know once you find that very precious measurement ID, you have to click the copy button because you're going to paste it somewhere. So this is, I hyperlinked on slide 5, you know, some information about what a tracking ID used to look like, but that's old tech. The new tech is measurement ID, and then eventually that might change too. The tracking, the measurement ID starts with a G and a dash, and then it's a bunch of characters after that. So once you have that precious alphanumeric code, the measurement ID, you're going to go back to your Google site. In your Google site, you have a cog for settings. When you click on that cog, looks like a flower or a gear, this box will open up. So this is the settings, and there are 5 different menu items here. Navigation is a place for you to designate whether your menu bar is going to be at the top or at the side of your Google site. Brand images, you can brand your site with your unit logo. Viewer tools, don't remember what that is at this point, but analytics is where you want to be. And we use Google Sites like it's been a huge game changer for us, right?
Right.
Do you want to?
Yeah, so currently we have 3 sites. Initially, we built an internal instructional site to meet the needs of all of our teachers. Mind you, Riverside County Office of Education, Corona to Blythe, we're geographically challenged, so it's not very easy to push out resources. However, in building initially this internal instructional site, we saw the need to then build sites for our partners to inform them of our practices and allow them to share in. So we went from building a site out of necessity, instructional necessity. Here's your course instructional plans. Here's your calendar, the basics to survive as an instructor, to what do our partners need? We'll show you a little later one of our other sites, which is the College and Career Transition Plan. But going a step further, also informing our sites of things like pathways, CalPADS codes. So what we found is as we built one, we saw the radial effect of building the other ones according to the needs of our partners. So very quickly, we understood that it's not important just to build it, but what does the build tell us about how to continue the build? So in their usage and their engagement, we now need to do X and Y and Z as a result of that.
I love playing around with the Zoom buttons, but so now we're up to like 46 of you here. Hopefully we've gotten, we haven't gotten too technical. We don't want to lose you in the technical details. But as Abel just shared, we actually went 2 years ago, we had to transition from something called Power School.
Yes.
You
Power
remember?
School, Haiku, similar to Blackboard, if you remember those platforms.
Google Sites has been so much more user-friendly. And even for those of our teachers who are not at Google districts, they just, they still have an RCOE Google account because they work for RCOE. And we've been able to push out course outlines, videos of webinars we've presented. It's a highly trafficked website, and I don't know if that's the right terminology, but it is a place, because even during the pandemic, when we couldn't see our teachers on a regular basis, and even though we meet with them as professional learning communities with their particular industry pathways, there's so much information, and this is, you know, our Google site for CTE is a great asynchronous place for our teachers to stay engaged, as well as our administrators, because we have 4 regional coordinator principals. And when they need to find something, they don't have to go dumpster diving in the Google Drive. So if you're still in the Google Drive space and you haven't organized all your digital documents on a Google site, I highly recommend it. So back to the slides. So once you paste, and everybody here who's an educator knows Control V, because we copied the measurement ID from the Google Analytics site, there was a copy button. Here in this space here, you Control V to paste it. And then once you paste it, this button should be enabled. Okay. So that's as easy as it is. If you can find that magical measurement ID, you paste it in your Google site setting and you're done. Now Google Analytics will start monitoring the traffic to your website. The next thing we learned was that if we wanted to collaborate as a leadership team about this traffic and looking at the data that came out of analytics, we had to share the dashboard, the analytics dashboard, with each other, with our director. So this space here is where you can add other admin users to the analytics account that you've created. So from the admin cog, account access management, and then add users should pop up, and you can add a user. There are different types of access you can give them. So an administrator would have full control of the account, which is what Abel and I would have for something that we both for that CTE website. Or you can give somebody editor rights, analyst rights, or just as a viewer. But if you are on a team of collaborators, a PLC leadership, you want to look at the data dashboard together to be able to have those illuminating moments where you realize, oh, we should be doing this, or we should be doing that based on that data.
Well, in looking at the data, one of the things, again, we're people that are learning this particular process as we go along, is we discovered this small button called Insights. And what it really did was blow up the data a bit more by providing us with additional enhanced data. So as you're going through the different sites and the different pages and reports relative to the analytics, Google has done some of the legwork for you and the research for you as relates to on this particular page. By clicking Insights, it then expands upon what that data is communicating to you. So where you might be stuck looking at just user data or even engagement data, by clicking Insights, it will then expound upon it by giving you time. So not just how many people are looking at the site, how long are they looking at the site? What sites are they kind of lingering on? And in looking at that particular information, you can then draw conclusions about what kind of resources and support should be used to amplify that particular page. So really, this is really a conversation about Google website, Google Sites, and how it is expounded upon by what the data tells us in analytics.
So some of the questions you might want to ask, and hitting that Insights button, which you might have seen also in Excel, not Excel, but Google Sheets. It's in the lower right corner sometimes. So Google Analytics has made it easier to determine what are some of the important questions your analytics can answer. So what would you like to know? How many users did I have on my website last week? Or what countries do my users come from? What's the trend of monthly users? And year to year. So imagine you're in the classroom, you use your Google site for your class, for classes, for multiple preps. And you want to determine or demonstrate that your usage with students on your website, where your digital resources are, has grown since last year. So maybe that tells us students have more access to digital devices and they're more able to connect and engage with digital resources than they were last year. So that's a growth. What kinds of devices are used most with your Google site? So this is great with students as well, because what if your students were only accessing your website with their phone, right? And it'll say it's an iPhone or an Android phone, but maybe you want them to be using a laptop or a desktop. So because you know that the phone usage is not as meaningful because it's a smaller screen. So they're possibly not engaging as deeply as they would if they were on a laptop or a desktop. So Insights breaks it down into these categories. Not all of them are relevant to education because, as we said, this is a site Google Analytics tracks. Also ad activity because it's for online businesses.
And you'll be excited to know that we've had our website open since February and we've generated $0. So that's an important fact to know as you're going along this process.
Okay, so that was the technical aspect of Google Sites analytics. If you want to learn more, or you get stuck in trying to set it up, we're providing some links here. Again, we're not in it for the money, but because this is RCOE, but for us, despite the fact that we have no ads on our site and all this, it's been a real helpful tool to be able to see that, oh, our automotive teachers are accessing their course outlines at such and such time after we've done a training, which is great. Where are the healthcare instructors? You know, what's going on there? So we actually know who to talk to based on the analytics. So I think I'm gonna exit out of here for a second and just show you a sample site to just quickly navigate through the pages. So starting with analytics, let me go to the basic URL, which I mentioned in the slide presentation, just so that you can see what it looks like. And as we hit the halfway mark of our presentation, are there any questions now? I haven't looked at the chat myself, but. Okay, so the main landing page for analytics looks like this. So you can play around with it. You can't break anything, just click around the buttons and get comfortable with it's really overwhelming. I mean, there's a lot there. And that's why some of the YouTube videos I hyperlinked, I think will help you kind of make it more manageable. Down below here on the lower left, where you see the admin button, that's where you would really need to start with analytics. Once you have your website running, you would create an account. And under the account is where you title what you're going to call this analytics account that you're going to monitor your website traffic with. So for example, we have this property is called RCOE CTE1. That's how we monitor our CTE website traffic. This is for our college and career transition plan. And then this is the one I just created this morning for the Google Camp demo. It was that easy. I mean, it's literally just create account and I'll go through the motions just so I can show you. So I type in a name, next, and then what the property name will be. I'll just use the same name. Again, your ed tech office should be able to provide you with more technical assistance, and then create. There's a little terms of service because we know Google tracks everything. They're in it for the money. We're not. So I accept. You can read the fine print later. But there it is. Now your sample analytics space is set up and you can start tracking. The measurement ID I told you about, this is the search area where you will do a search for measurement ID and find that magical number. Once you find it, you paste it here. This is the College of the Desert website I mentioned. In the upper right, settings for my website, analytics, and then I paste that ID here. And it should start with a G and then dash it. Some of them also start with a UA for some reason, but anyway, so that's the technical stuff, setting that up. Once that's set up, we're going to now show you through CCTV?
Before you go there, there's a
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
So do you have to create a new account for each website or new property?
Yes. And so that's an interesting question. The distinction between create account and create property, it's more about the business end of this, but for a specific website, I had to create a new account. So just so that I didn't mix up today's demo with any of our other analytics, I created a new account, not a new property. When I tried creating a new property, it actually was a sub analytics of one of our existing ones. So good question. So we'll take you through the CCTP. And this is that website. Just for a minute, I'll let Abel explain to you what it is.
So if you didn't know this already, CT stands for Career Technical Education. And beyond just the instruction of how to change a tire in automotive, how to do forensics and law enforcement, or in my case, marketing, how to do a marketing plan, it is our goal that every student receives instruction on post-secondary. What are you going to do when you exit high school? What we found, especially having so many instructors with such a wide variety of experience, is that they were doing it differently. That is to say, one teacher might have emphasized interviewing because that was their strength. Another might have emphasized financial literacy because that was their strength. And we were trying to bring all the industrial disciplines into uniformity. So internally, we developed instructional plans, we developed lesson plans, presentation material. And let me say this, if you are at a site, if you're with the district partner of ours, this is a free website with materials available to you. So anyone can go to this website and download the materials and provide that instruction. It's 12 topics for 15 hours that we utilize. Now, the reason we created this website was because we had a challenge. One, we wanted to bring all the disciplines into uniformity. We wanted to give them the materials. We wanted to mandate the instruction. We wanted to collect data. But two, because we are geographically challenged, we also recognize that our teachers are both RCOE employees and guests at a district site. And 9 times out of 10, they're utilizing the district site email. So our internal instructional website, where they had to log in under RCOE, was something that would create challenges. So we created a public website. Here's the public website. You didn't have to log in. All the resources are available to you. So one of the things that we have at the website is we have the steps to the process. So if you're interested, again, the steps to the process are listed there. We have the lesson plans all written out. We have the presentations provided for. We have pacing options. We took all the guesswork out of all this, including and up to data collection. So especially in the case of our seniors, we want to track what is their decision making. February 2022, we went to Educating for Careers Conference, which is a big CTE conference, where we shared this resource with all of the partners that were there. Now, we wanted to know the impact of that particular website. We wanted to know how it was doing, how it was being used as a resource, what were they looking at. So if we go back to the presentation to slide 20, I'd like to show you what we started to discover. Because when you build a site, you're building a site with a purpose in mind. What is that purpose? And that purpose will inform the questions that are going to come into play. So we have the shared resource. We're going to drop the link to the website in the chat shortly. But if we go to the next slide, one of the things that we wanted to do was analyze, since its inception, the usage. So this is one of the screenshots from our analytics. And an important question we had is, what is the traffic? Now, I'm not a Google expert. I'm hoping that's the right term. But how many people are coming to our site? What are the peaks and valleys of that particular engagement? And what are they looking at? So right out of the gate, we introduced this 227 Educating for Careers Conference. Since that day, we've had 934 users, unique users. Now, we only have 134 instructors, so we're showing outside engagement with this particular content. We saw spikes in March. We saw spikes in late April and May. Now, internally for us, dealing with school sites, That told us that at the end of the school year, not just with the introduction, but at the end of the school year, as students are exiting, is when we see the highest engagement as preparing students to leave their courses. So for us, on the support side, that gives us a window within these particular periods of time to then provide open office hours for the teachers to get support on how to execute the lessons. So the analytics starts to lay out the framework for those support structures. If we have a spike in March, if we have a spike in April, in those gaps is when we're going to come out with the tutorials and the videos. And even, like I said, we love open office hours. We used to call it the coffee hour, just because we were hoping to stimulate new thinking about what was going on. That helped us through Google Analytics. That told us about the seasons of the CCTV. If we go to the next slide, I'm sorry.
Well, this is important, and I appreciate those who have and maybe you can pop the link to
Yes.
the CCTP on the website in the chat. But you guys are already asking some good technical questions. So I know you're probably wondering at the top of the screenshot, it says event count, total users, event count per user. And the significance of that, I think, is awesome based on what Abel and one of our coordinator principals created here. There are close to 3,000 hits to the site. The unique users is what the total users is, right? So that is where the 3 comes from, which is that people are returning. So unique individuals are returning multiple times, and in fact, 3 times on average to the website. And that's very reassuring.
Yes. So when we're looking at these users and their returns and these spikes, we can also identify where they're going on the website to inform what is the user's behavior and what are the priorities for the user. So let me say this. The College and Career Transition Plan, we call it the CCTP, is built so that it's delivered a particular way. So for us, it was important that our teachers and our partners knew what the steps were. But notice something in this particular live data that we were able to pull. The CCTP, that first bar, is the landing page. Of course, everybody lands on the landing page. That second bar is called links. So most people, when they visited our site, that was the second most visited page. In their minds thought, if I go to the links, that's where all the resources are at. The links page is actually where all the links to the external resources are. Meaning, if I needed to get an online application, I go to the links page. Notice that below that, the lesson plans, below that, the transition guide, below that, the data collection. So in essence, what we're being communicated is that there's a disconnect in the messaging and the labeling of the pages. We want them to go to the steps. We want them to go to the lessons and then to the links last. In the mind of the user, all the resources are on the links page. So this communicates to us how we can change the formatting and the labeling. So analytics does that for us. Now, I highlighted that, I boxed out the bottom 3 bars because really those are the big pieces. We want them to look at the lessons. We want them to look at the transition guide, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we want them to do the data collection. However, because they're kind of stumbling through because of the lack of proper labeling, we're seeing it being done in a different direction. So again, when we're looking at analytics, it tells us how to fix things that the user is finding in their experience. Then we ask another question. So not only what are the pages that are being engaged, next slide, how long or what's the priority pages? So for us, internally, RCOE would say the transition guide. Now let me explain what that is. As they're delivering this content, we want the student to complete a guide that literally lays out 10 years of their employment. Here's the courses I have to take. Here's the colleges I have to go to. And we give a copy to the student. So upon exiting high school, they have this roadmap to what to do next. Why is that important? Well, if you notice on this particular graph, that's the 4th thing that they're visiting. For RCOE, that's a top resource. That's something that they should be giving to every student. But for the average user and visitor who's coming to the site, that's not something that they're prioritizing. They're coming to that later down the line. Notice again, the steps. If you want to use this material, we want you to go through particular steps. That's 6 down the line. So that starts to communicate to me that there might be even disjointed instruction because oftentimes they're going to the resources, pulling the resources, and then executing the lesson. So we can infer certain things. And again, as a result of what we're seeing, we can tailor our support because the data is communicating certain messages. Now, here's the part that I really find interesting. How long are they spending on the page? So 934 users, 2.8 thousand events or actual instances in which they got to the page. How long are they actually on the page engaging that material? So now we're breaking it down to the minute, and in this case, minute and seconds, if you will. So look again, for us, the top resources were the transition guide, where they're only spending about 1 minute and 9 seconds. The steps, where they're only spending 58 seconds. And then for most people, it's the lessons and the presentations where they're spending 1 minute and 18 seconds. So what is that communicating to us? Is that saying that this resource is not of value? No, they're having short engagement time. So what potentially is occurring is that they're doing offline engagement. They're downloading and coming back to it later. So for us, it's important that we, again, identify areas of support. Can we create tutorials so that they're not having to dissect this material and try to interpret it offline? Can we create videos where we walk them through the steps of here are the important pages and such? So in looking at their time on a page, we can determine what is of value and where support is needed as a result of that. Now, here's where I have to confess again, not only am I limited, but at times we can argue that the Google Analytics is somewhat limited. As we were preparing for this particular session, we stumbled upon this data. Now, number one, it doesn't tell you who the user is. So do I know if it's an RCOE teacher? Do I know if it's an LEA? In some cases, do I know if it's a curriculum company that has reached out? We've had that occur. Who is this person? I don't know. I really don't know who this person is. So that can at times create questions about how I tailor the support. Is it for a teacher? Is it for an admin? The other thing that I thought was very interesting is not only does it not tell you who the user is, it doesn't tell you where the user is. Now, if you notice these big dark states, obviously United States and Alaska, we were happy to find out that not only have we had this amazing impact in the United States and Alaska, but we have penetrated the Czech Republic. We have 36 users coming from the Czech Republic. Germany clocks in at 6, and somewhere in Indonesia, someone is teaching the CCTV. So I don't know what to say other than maybe we do. Either they're using the VPN or we're having some type of global effect. Whatever the case may be, as you're looking at analytics, I think it's important to know that it won't tell you the specificity of, is it Southern California? Is it Riverside County?
It actually does. Yeah,
Oh, it does.
It does. And unfortunately, we're not at that level to know how to get to it. But we're trying to be as humble as possible about how early stages this is for us. And when word got out throughout RCOE that CT is using Google Sites for their stuff, and that, oh, wait, they're also doing analytics, the special ed unit came to us and like, can you show us how you set that up? And then one of the assistant superintendent's offices came and said, can you show us how you set that up? And at that point, we got kind of busy. So there's still a lot we're discovering, but I think it can give us city level data.
Thank you. Look at something I learned just at this moment, at this time. But I think the important aspect of getting to that level when that data is available is when we talk about tailoring support, the challenges of Southern California, the challenges of RCOE and its regional partners, the challenges of a charter school, the challenges even of taking this, to another state can help us not just tailor the support, but maybe even tailor the instructional materials. How can we change the CCTP to address people in New York, in Florida, in Texas, or potentially internationally as well? So I think those limitations we can discover through discovery and learning, but can help widen the margin of information available. So to that point, on the next slide is going back to the question of how do we use this? Well, here in RCO CTE, I'm not speaking for all of RCOE, but CTE, we want to evaluate our support systems and resources. Is it making an impact? When we rolled this out at Educating for Careers in February, At that time, that weekend, that end of the week, I think we had 30 hits. By the end of the month, we had 60 hits. To now know we're about to break 1,000 unique users and break 3,000 instances speaks to the value of this resource. But at the same time, it provides us data about how we can improve that resource. As we saw, the things that we felt were important resources have to be relabeled so people can find it. So that's something we have to work on so that we can inform our progress in our decision-making process. Nobody wants to make a decision on a gut feeling. As good as your gut is, nothing beats data. And so if we can have data and we can make informed decisions, we will be a better unit and better serve the people that we work with. So that's how RCOE CT uses it.
So I'm going to stop the share for a second again as we clear our palettes before we go into analytics for the slides and docs and sheets. But I have to say, if you haven't already gone to the CCTP website, those lessons, which as Abel mentioned, are totally free, he and several other members of our unit co-developed these lessons. And my favorite, and I was able to sub at Moreno Valley High School last fall, where I had to teach a lesson in retirement, which was right from this website. And I called it, because the high school students, right before Halloween, everybody was sugared up and couldn't care less about retirement. They're like, Miss, when are you gonna retire a millionaire? Because I called the lesson, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And so I got their attention. If I had had that website, because if you recall, it was created in February for the conference in Sacramento. But if we had a website for the CCTP for students, we could have monitored, how many of those students engaged with the lesson, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, as they prepare for retirement, even though they're only 16, 17 years old.
Quite the engaging title.
I think so. I think so. So any questions before we dive into something else that those of you maybe who teach English, who use Google Docs and provide comments to students, you might find this sort of eye-opening. If you already know about the activity dashboard, kudos to you. You're way ahead of the other digital educators. So hopefully your stomachs aren't growling. Maybe we'll be done in about 10, 11 minutes, but okay. So and to anyone who was bold enough to try to set up Google Analytics for their Google site, you can do this. Our email addresses are on the, I think they're on the, or well, we'll paste them in the chat. I don't think I put them on the cover slide, but if you need technical assistance, we're happy to provide that. If you can't find answers at your district. So I'll go back to the share and I'm on slide 12. And if you have a slide presentation open that you've created, or you have a Google Doc that you've created open that you've shared with students, feel free to go through these motions and we'll see some amazing analytics here. So in the spirit of collaboration, I have to give kudos to our Assistant Superintendent Secretary. So Dr. Newman here at RCOE is supported by Catherine Belcher. And when she reached out to learn about Google Sites Analytics, she showed me something that I was like, what? Because Dr. Newman communicates on a monthly basis with us with a newsletter, and he uses Google Slides for that, or Catherine does, and to put all his information there. And she goes, well, look at how I can tell how many of our management team members have accessed the slide presentation. I was like, wow, mind blowing. Everybody should know about this. So basically, on a docs, sheets, or slide document, you go to tools, and then all the way at the very bottom, you should see activity dashboard. So there's a lovely, I think she's Australian teacher here talking about how to use, how she uses it. And then on the next, slide, I'm going to take you through the 5 menu items in the activity dashboard. So this is from this presentation, Know Thy Google Impact. So when I shared the presentation with Abel, it shows me when he last viewed it.
Don't look.
So imagine if you shared those slides, right, with your students, and imagine if you give them editing rights. So if they have editing rights, they'll actually come up here by account name, and you'll see the last time they accessed. The next view is the viewer trend. So you can actually see the traffic on your slides. Again, this applies to docs like it does to sheets and slides. So there's a drop-down menu here that gives you a time frame. You can do it by week, by 14 days, or all time, okay? Cumulative. And there's always some helpful information here, like charts do not include anyone who has opted out. Comment trend. This was, like, for me, mind-blowing, because if you are giving feedback to students by commenting and saying, you need to edit this paragraph, there's not enough supporting information from the literature or whatever, on a Google Slides presentation, maybe you're teaching them how to do a better presentation, you're giving them feedback. Imagine if the students were not taking your feedback and putting it to use. How could you tell? Are they interacting? Are they responding to your comments? Because if a slide presentation is, say, 20 slides, how are you going to monitor all the comments in one space? And this dashboard does that. So I have a Google Doc that's about 20 pages or so, and the person who was collaborating with me on it had given me comments. And by looking at my comments activity, I realized, oh, so these pink dots are the number of unresolved comments. So the person providing me feedback would look at those comments and see, well, I haven't marked them resolved. So I realized, oh, this is a great signal for me that I should mark those resolved. And so, and I'll try to demo that in a minute if you don't know what comments are on any of these Google apps. So again, it breaks it down by new comments. The replies are in light blue, and then the pink ones are the ones that have remained unresolved. Over here at the end is where, like, I had 5 unresolved comments. That's the number 5 here between 4 and 6. I had 5 unresolved for quite a while. And it was just basically like, the comment was like, good job. If you don't respond to that, if you don't mark it as resolved, then it'll just remain an unresolved comment. So that's between you and the student if you want to resolve those. And then, of course, if the resolution is just clicking the check mark resolved, that's not necessarily the student putting your feedback into play. So you still have to kind of read through the updated document to see if they put your comments to use. This is a little bit more information about the sharing history. So it gives you timestamps of when different sharing happened. And then lastly, there's some privacy settings. So you as the owner can actually turn off some of the analytics if you don't want that information shared, and then save. So again, this applies to docs, slides, and sheets. And this is Google Analytics Slides Help if this is too technical. And those are all the slides we had. And I'm just going to take you through a sample. So if you haven't had a chance to comment on our slide presentation, I gave you all commenting rights. So anybody with the link to our slide deck can click this button in the upper right and then write comments. So far it's just Abel and myself testing out the comment feature. Can you test that out for us and just write some comments for us? Give us some feedback. This is another way of telling us what you're thinking. So we see like 17 of you here, 22 of you are on the slide deck. You should be able to click the button and then write some comments. So for us to monitor those comments, we would go over here again under Tools, Activity Dashboard. And so now I can see there's some activity going on with the comments. So the light blue again is new replies, or the dark blue is the new comments, and then replies are the light blue. Anything unresolved is the pink. And then in case you don't know on Google Slides, on the navigation pane here on the left, if you see this little icon, the little dark box here with the number, that tells you how many comments. That just means there are comments there. And then the ones that have videos have these little motion icons as well. If you want to see the slide deck, all slides at a glance, it's this button here that is the grid view. That also kind of gives you where the comments are, so you can quickly navigate to those. So I'll stop the share because those are the technical aspects. Let you ask us any questions you might have. Share your best practices. If you have been using analytics with your teams, with your students, and maybe you've discovered some enlightening information, like students are doing homework at 3 a.m. So feel free to unmute and say hi and interact. Q&A time. Thank you, Shelia. Did I pronounce that right? Shelia? Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer.
I love the accountability this provides. Like now my students know when I share a document that they're supposed to fill out and they tell me they did. I mean, obviously I could see if they did or not, but I could see if they even opened it up when I asked them to. So yeah, it's awesome.
And it is. Thank you, Angela, for saying that. Like sometimes we feel like big brother, big sister, like, I mean, but accountability doesn't have to be a bad word. Because as you can see, like we're trying to improve the product too, right? So, but it does help to see like, it's like a mini gotcha because they're still learning, right? The students are still learning how to use technology to learn.
And even thinking about it from the perspective of using it as a digital checking for understanding, where you can place your prompts, where you can ask for that engagement, and then it structures your reteaching as a result of that live. It used to be poll everywhere and things like that. Now, right into the document, we're checking for understanding as we go along.
I didn't know till today you can comment on slides. I've only used it on documents.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that as well. You know, it's funny how there are buttons there in front of us as we're using the Google apps, so we don't even realize what they do. But I'm one that like, oh, what does that do? You know, and it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that. But if you look at the slide deck, right where the number of participants that are looking at the slides, to the right of that list is a squiggly little line graph with an arrow pointing up, and that brings up the activity dashboard. So that's an actual button. And it actually has a help tip that says document editors can see your view history for this file. So it tells me that I'm sharing, that I haven't opted out. So, and then even navigating, like teaching your students the protocols for when I give you feedback. And I see Veronica posted great presentation, a lot of useful info. I'm interested to see how I can apply this. Thank you, Veronica. So at this point, if that was feedback for my writing or for the quality of my presentation for my project, do I mark it as resolved as the student? Do you expect me as the student then to add a reply? I think as a courtesy to know that I've acknowledged your comment, as my teacher, I would say something, and that I will incorporate it. So again, it's, this is, I think, a very useful way of growing a student's work without having to do the paper, pen, red pen, green pen, whatever, purple pen that we used to do in the back in the day. I used to be a math teacher, so a lot of purple pen on paperwork. And then I transitioned into CTE, which is, I think, what gave me the opportunity to do more of this digital stuff. So yeah, Angela commented. She gave an A+ on the test. Good job. Okay. Yeah. We're all learning, right? And if you haven't already gotten a Google certification, I highly recommend it. Then I commend you for spending your 2 summer days with the Google camp. I think it's amazing. So if you're going off to lunch, thank you for joining us. We'll stick around for another 6-7 minutes to answer questions. Hopefully we didn't bombard you with too much technical stuff, but it was just enough to excite you to learn some new features.
And it looks like somebody's discovered how to switch over the demographics to the city information.
I love that. Okay.
Wonderful.
Yes. If they're still here, maybe they'll tell us before we go fishing around for it, but that's good. Thank you, Dahlia.
I had a quick question. I might have missed you saying it earlier.
Mhm.
But do you have to have a higher level of the workspace, like the paid workspace, to get the Google Analytics, or is it free?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah. We should have mentioned that. I don't think you need to have anything paid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And in fact, some of the participants here may go out and start a Google site as a business and, just to see, a lot of teachers have a side hustle, right? Selling crafts, whatever, lesson plans. But I don't see anything that has to be paid unless you want like more advanced analytics. And if you're going to run ads and then, then it gets into the paid space. But a lot of it is free. They'll suck you in that way.
I like how Google's keeping up with the Instagram and YouTube as far as their analytics go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also had a question.
Hi.
Hi, Veronica. When you were setting up the Google Analytics, and I think they kind of mentioned it on the chat, but I wasn't 100% sure that's what you meant. When you're setting up the account, you do have to set one up for every Google site you do, or is it like, for example, if I were to set up my Google site, I work as an accounting assistant at a high school, and so I'm kind of trying to set up where they can have access to like the different documents that we need, like purchase order requests or access to the Google Forms and whatnot. And so if I were to set up like the Google site first and add the analytics, would I have to add it to like every page afterwards, or is it, like one per site and it covers all of the pages?
That's a great question, because I didn't get into depth on that. So basically, when we created the CCTP, the College and Career Transition Plan, it was just a matter of, and I'll go back to the share for a minute, just so you can see the admin setup. I gave the, so here's the account settings. When I click the create account, I just said RCOE, CTE, CCTP, and then save that. And then this is where we gave access to our executive director to see the analytics as well. And then there was a point where I had to give the URL for the website I'm trying to monitor traffic for, but I think that was like over a year ago, and I think they changed that. So just by connecting that measurement ID back on my site, it automatically gives us analytics for every single web page on the CCTP site. Otherwise, it would have been so cumbersome to hyperlink every single subpage, but we didn't have to do that. So literally, like, just a matter of creating the account, linking that measurement ID, and it just intuitively knows what's going on with the site, and being able to drill down to specific pages and so on. We didn't go into the reports, but there's, technical names for like acquisition, who the visitors are, then engagement, what they're doing. The sub reports are insane, like super granular, like there's a lot going on. We did not set any of this up. Analytics does all the technical. I hope I answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, okay. So for example, like I also coach soccer, so I would set up an account for, like, say, the finance office page, and then another account for the soccer page. Right? Because I'm trying to track, it's two different things that I'm trying to track.
It's the same website?
No, it'd be like two different things, right? Because I mean,
But is it the same? Is the accounting website the same website as the soccer website? Because it's for the same site, right? And you're using one website?
No. So I work at Ramona High School, right?
Okay.
And so I work to do the finance office page would be like one site, and then
I see.
the girls soccer would be a
So you have-
different site.
It's one website for the soccer team, one completely different website for the finance office.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then I set up two different accounts,
Two
right?
different accounts, exactly.
If it was a sub page, like the finance page is one page and soccer page is on the same website, then it would track it under one.
That's called a property. Then you'd
Yes.
create a property under the.
So for example, let's say I go to the ASB director, and then under the general ASB, it would be like there's a finance page, and then there's like the club pages. So then soccer would be part of those club pages. So then it would be one account for the ASB pages to track everyone that goes to all of the ASB pages. And then within those sub reports, I can look how many people are actually going to finance or how many people are going to soccer. Got it.
As well as how much time they spend on that particular page, yes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And I can do this after it's been set up, right? I can do it at any time.
Yeah, yeah. And remember, like so there's one measurement ID for every specific website. So your accounting one will have a different measurement ID, and your soccer one will have a different measurement ID. And then if you want to focus on specific things under the soccer website, then you can create sub properties to really focus in on that info. I think you got it, and I think we need to maybe prepare to offer a more advanced version of this training,
Yes.
or you can.
We'll go to your training.
Yeah.
'Cause it sounds like you're getting advanced there.
Well done.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. I'm not sure how much it would apply to me, but I think overall in the school-wide process, it would be something to bring up.
Yeah,
If they can bring it under the same umbrella, it would simplify the process. Versus here's this site, here's that site, because then you can do those comparatives, and similar to our website, do you see spikes during the season? Is there interest spikes coming into the season, leaving? So all of that will even help inform scheduling, maybe, things like that can come into play.
and I forgot to ask everybody to share where they're from, but anyway, I'm not sure if everybody's district will have the capability for Google Analytics, but Angela shared with us in a private message that she got a message that said, we are sorry, but you do not have access to Google Analytics. Please contact your organization administrator for access. So I suggested if she asked the Ed Tech office, maybe they'll enable it. I don't think it's a major security issue if that's the problem. There's no cost involved. So if they're able to with the organizational Google account, she should be able to get that, but not everybody will by default. Thank you, Vero. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to stop the recording, or I guess we'll just end the session and maybe make Isa post again. Thank you all for being here. Have a great lunch and have a great rest of the Google camp.
Good day.